Today we've got Brennen from Squint. Brennen, I'm super excited to chat with you. I think it's been less than 1 minute since I've ever seen your face. And I already know that I think I'm just going to like you. Just saying, like, just immediate vibes alone. Just a big fan of, big fan of you.
You picked the right member of the band, because the other guys.
Yeah, I'm sure I'm sure I don't get the right vibes from the other guys in the band, but at least you, I get the right vibes from.
Faces alone, they'll turn you off. But
yeah, well,
there's a reason why you're the singer of the band, right?
Yep.
Yeah, well, there's a reason why you're singing the band because of course, like you got to be the most attractive dude in the band if you're gonna want to be the singer, right? Especially hardcore.
Mason has a terrible male gaze. He just
no, honestly,
really.
What do you mean by like that? I gaze at the men terribly, or that I can't help but stare at the men. Like what do you mean by terrible here?
And it's terrible because you're judging them based off of their looks.
No, humbly, we're a pretty good looking group of guys.
I'd say.
Yeah.
Honestly, also very in shape. I can tell you that too.
Thank you.
You guys all look like you could potentially be Irish brawlers from the 1800s if you just change your clothes.
I definitely, I think I have both of those things in my bloodline. But yeah, no, we just prioritize our health, and it's also like when you're touring not nonstop, but you're touring pretty regularly, and you just gotta take care of yourself, and you never know, what's gonna happen. So you have to, stay physically fit, and
It's true. But those tornadoes from the gas station are calling your name.
Stop. I mean, as long as you're hitting your protein goals, get it by any means necessary, And
I suppose.
And we've got a vegan in the band, and he's still hitting his goals. So literally, no one has any excuses, So
clearly, no excuse.
No, I mean the man downs chickpeas. So
I will say I have literally thought about this before, just because Cullen and I interview so many different kinds of bands, and almost all the bands that we interview are touring bands, and I have thought about this before where. At some point, if you have enough dietary restrictions, you just aren't able to be in a band.
Yeah, it gets hard.
At least you're not able to be a band at a sort of
unless you're really
like
rich.
The kind of band that would like tour in a van rather than a bus. Like you're just at some point you're not able to be in a band. Like vegan, okay, like there's maybe enough exceptions out there, at least in this world now. Like maybe 20 years ago that probably didn't exist, but now it probably is possible to like be a vegan in a band that's like touring in a van.
Yeah.
But I will say, like, if you were gluten-free and dairy-free, well, I guess like most vegans are dairy-free, but like if you're gluten-free and a vegan, good luck.
No, you're screwed.
I just like at that point, it's like you're just sucking down water the entire tour. Like I just don't know what else you're gonna be able to eat.
I've seen it firsthand with when we were the first time we went over to Europe, we toured with our label mates from Belgium called Fever Child. And their singer is gluten-free, like bad, like he will have bad stomach problems if he does it. We found out. Because nowhere, they were like gluten-free, like this is pasta, we don't know what gluten is. And, yeah, Jan paid the price multiple times, but
have you ever toured with somebody who's not gluten intolerant? Have you ever toured with somebody who's lactose intolerant, but decides to eat some lactose?
No, luckily.
Because I've had some dorm mates that like that, and they're not particularly great. And I can't imagine like on a bus or a van, like that would be great either.
The closest I've come to that was we toured with my old band toured with a band from Florida called Head Creeps. I'll name them because the guy with them wasn't in the band. I don't want to out him in case he's still vegan or anything. But basically their merch guy, after the St. Louis show, indulged in quite a bit of substances and stuff, and blacked out, as some would say. And we didn't know he was a vegan guy, and we all had a bunch of barbecue and stuff, and he ate a ton of it. And next morning woke up not knowing why his stomach was in knots and everything. We were like, I don't know, man. Like, we ate pretty late. That might be why. And he was like, we ate? Like, what did we eat? And we're like telling him like we ate like ribs and mac and cheese and all this stuff. And
Oh,
And yeah, he was pretty upset with himself. So like I said, I'm not going to, I don't want to out the guy, by name or anything, because I believe in his conscious state of mind, he has good intentions, and we didn't know, otherwise we wouldn't obviously have, intervened, but we were just like, yeah, man, if you're hungry, have some, so that was the closest I've come to that. And yeah, but luckily,
how does one stay in shape on tour for a band like Squint? Like, are you just trying to outrun the van? Like, what is it?
no,
That keeps you in shape?
we work out a lot on the road. We have, if we're going overseas or anything like that, we'll bring like resistance bands, stuff like that. There's also a lot of like, especially in Europe and stuff, they've got a lot of gyms in the park. You can do some pull-ups on some monkey bars, old
like
school
like
style.
calisthenic kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Nice.
Even just like push-ups in the green room, like really, from a lifting standpoint, you're not so much trying to gain muscle on the road as much as you are just kind of maintain,
Yeah.
because a lot of times, even if you strive to hit like, eat as much as you need to and all that, like you said, it can get pretty expensive pretty quick when you're on the road and you're not cooking for yourself, and
True.
trying to eat all the stuff that, you do back at home.
I think if we're not careful, this is going to turn into a Joe Rogan podcast episode. So
No.
I agree. Yeah, we'll move the other direction.
To be clear, down
so-
with that, but being strong is awesome for the record, and
Being strong is awesome. I
It's
agree. I agree.
Especially if you're in hardcore. My goodness, like it's a
Yeah.
workout just to play a show. So like if you're strong, it just like gives you an advantage to be able to at least like make it through a show and you're like don't feel like you're feel like shit the next
100%.
morning.
Yeah, no, actually, a couple weeks ago we played a show, and it was a wake up call that I need to start hitting the cardio again before this upcoming tour. So I've been doing that. I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit later, but we've got a new record coming out here in a couple months, and I've been not loudly singing it, but singing it to myself while I run on the treadmill so I can get acclimated.
Who was it? Cullen, we just interviewed somebody like a couple months ago who does the same thing.
Is it Johnny Booth?
I don't think the interview has come out yet, but it's actually a really popular artist. I think it's
Sainthood Reps. Was it done?
No, it was the guy from one of the metalcore bands that's huge. Like, not I Prevail, but it's kind of like in that vein. Anyway, we just interviewed we haven't released the episode yet, but it's like a super famous metalcore artist. And he does the same thing where while he's like running, like he'll go out for a run or whatever, and then he'll like literally try to scream because he's like the unclean singer in the band.
Yeah.
And he'll do like the screaming while he's literally running. And that's like how he trains for the shows.
Well, that's reassuring to hear that that I'm not the only one doing this weird thing, but I'm also not yelling at full volume. I don't want to paint some picture because I'm in a Planet Fitness, so I'm not like. But I do try to match
Drop the weights there, much less scream.
Yeah, match my breathing to it as much as possible, and just because that's the hardest part when you're on stage is you can tend to get carried away, especially if you're me and like. I've always been like a mosher and stuff like that growing up. So I tend to move a lot and, you don't want to have high energy at the beginning of the set and then be winded halfway through. So, just planning ahead as much as possible and acclimating your body to the fact that you're going to be, putting it under that kind of stress for 20 minutes to however long, but
for sure.
Yeah. So I have to start by saying, I think you guys are criminally under-listened to. Just judge. I use YouTube Music, and I was looking at your streams, and I was like, oh, these guys they've got to be bigger than, X, Y, and Z band just based off of listening numbers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking at the YouTube Music numbers. I'm like, oh, no, it's not. This is criminal. This is absolutely a travesty. It can't be.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
You guys have absolutely everything that you need to be there. Like to be like one of those classic new artists that come on the scene and just completely show up and show out. Great guitar tone, great lyrics, great music production, really, really tight playing. I'm just blown away. Is that kind of a feeling that you have as well from your perspective?
Well, first off, thanks so much. That means a ton, you know. As far as all that goes, I mean, it's one of those things where, you know, it's obviously you always want more kind of, and you know, you always not even in a selfish way, but it's just like I'd like to be playing for more people because that's more people I can interact with, and you know,
Yeah.
but you know, hardcore in general and Squint, you know, specifically are like hardcore now is in a place where shows are bigger than they've ever been as far as, you know, I'm concerned. So while, you know, while on a certain spectrum, it's like, yeah, dang, I wish we were bigger. I wish we were getting larger tours and larger tour packages and stuff like that. You know, on the flip side, I'm still, you know, playing to more people than I ever have in my previous bands on tours and stuff like that. And by that metric, you know, I'm very successful, you know, and not to bring it back to the gym thing, but there's a good thing I was told when I was younger, and it's the gym mentality. And it's that there's, you know, there's always going to be someone who's stronger than you, and there's always going to be someone who's weaker than you. And like, if you just chase that always being the strongest, you're never going to be happy, you know, because there's always going to be that guy who, you know, even if you get to be top dog in your gym, there's just going to be one guy who walks in one day and is just like, and then, you know, you're back to just wanting and wanting and wanting. And so while it is like important to like aspire for things and like, you know, we always try to push it, and we always try to make sure that we're moving in a progressive direction as opposed to regressive, you know, it's still just like, I stop and take a step back and I'm like, I'm in, you know, Budapest right now because I wrote some songs with my friends. And so like,
Hell yeah.
by that metric alone, like I'm extremely successful, you know? And like I had said, we'd love to get on some, you know, if any, you know, larger bands or anything like that are, you know, listening, like we do want to like get on larger tour packages and stuff like that. And have the opportunity to play in front of more people that may not know our music. But at the same time, I book all our tours stateside myself. And just the fact that I can email somebody and say, hey, I play in this band from the Midwest, you know, you've probably never heard of us. And they go, oh, dude, I was just listening to your stuff. Like, that's so surreal, you know, and so different than when I was 17 years old, just cold emailing random people being like, you know, my 3-chord power violence band needs a show in a basement. Can you please help me? You know, like
I will say, like, I think part of this is just like the music industry, and maybe this has always existed. Maybe this is a newer thing in the music industry. I'm not a historian in that way, but well, at least at some point, and it still probably is like this, where like there could be a pop artist, for example, like I don't know, like think of any super famous pop artist that you
Sabrina
ever know
Carpenter.
of.
Oh yeah.
Sabrina Carpenter, right? Who just like as soon as she makes an album, it's going to be the biggest thing ever. Like for her debut album, it's going to be big. It's going to get into the Grammys. It's going to likely go number 1 on the Billboard, just because of the sort of infrastructure that's around her, right?
Yeah.
Like that's a common experience for pop artists. Whereas like a hardcore artist, like when we look at like someone like Turnstile, right? Like Cullen and I are about to see Turnstile. Turnstile is at this level now where they're getting some commercials. They're obviously like hitting Billboard top 200 stuff. They're like
They were just
getting
interviewed
Coachella.
by Nardwuar. That's all that
Yeah,
matters.
like they're getting interviewed, like the big interviews. Like they're at a point where it's like, and it took them however many years, like probably at least 10 years, right? Like Turnstile has been a band for over 10 years now, right?
Yeah, for
Like,
sure.
it took them that many years to just get to that point, and they're still not even at like a Sabrina Carpenter level, right? And it's just like it's just because of the dynamic of the music industry and what kind of music you're making. And so like I think about it that way, where it's like y'all are just like in a music industry genre and world where it's just like it's gonna take a long time before you even like get to that like level, if you even get lucky, right? Like we think of like I mean, just like Knocked Loose is getting big right now, right? Like they played Jimmy Kimmel. Look, like they were playing like literally like shows for like 3 people
Mhm.
10 years ago. Like that's how long it's taken them to get to this level where now they're playing like Jimmy Kimmel or whatever. So it's just like, it's one of those things where it's just like, you're in that world where it's going to take a long time. And so like, that's sort of my encouragement for you all is like, it's amazing, like where you all are at right now. And it's one of those things where it's like, you're in a world where it's just like, it's going to take some time if you want to get to that level. And yeah, like, I think there's something rewarding about that. Like, I think about like, you guys were talking about like, you're talking about like gym people, like the people who have like worked their asses off, like typically those are people that it took them time. It just takes them time. And then you get to that point where it's just like, now you start to see some of the fruits of that labor.
Definitely. Yeah. Like, I mean, those bands specifically that you're talking about, like my old band, like played some shows with Turnstile back in 2012. And like, since then, they really haven't. I mean, like, idiots will tell you that they've changed their sound, but like, they haven't really. Like, I mean, like if you listen to the first stuff they put out or Step to Rhythm or anything like that, it's all just, this is like natural progression, and same with bands, like,
I'm sure when you met them in 2012, how was that 13 years ago now? Like 2012, I guarantee, I could be wrong, but like, I guarantee if you met those guys in 2012, you could just see like, these guys are talented even then.
And they had already, like, I mean, they had been a band for a while at that point, like they were probably on their second or third record at that point, at least 7-inch wise, but same thing with Knocked Loose. I have a friend, I'll shout him out. They're an awesome metalcore band here from St. Louis called Blistered Spirit. A couple of them used to be in a band when they were younger that I remember them telling me, they were like, we just played in this garage in Louisville and the opening band was awesome. They sent me the flyer and it was, all the bands with all their logos. And then at the bottom in Times New Roman, it said Knocked Loose, and just seeing where that band is now, and also just knowing that, again, obviously both bands have gotten better. They've refined their sound, they've matured, but they're still just doing what they do. So it's like with Squint, it's, I'm sure we maybe could, change stuff to what is hot right now or what's, and maybe get some more numbers out of all that. But we're just going to keep, like doing what it is that we do because, we like it. And like, if people come around to it, they will. And if they don't, if it never happens, it never happens. And, another thing I was going to say is also like, and if like, especially if any younger bands listen to this, like, numbers are important and all that, but like, don't get hung up on all your Spotify streams and stuff like that, because we played with bands that literally have 1 million monthly listeners on Spotify and there's 20 people at the show. And on the flip side, there's, bands like Prevention from Springfield, Illinois, who they've got like a couple thousand monthly listeners on Spotify. But when you see them live, it feels like a couple thousand people are singing all the words. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, just don't like forget what hardcore is, it's not like something you look at on a screen. It's something you like experience in a room, so like,
But that's what I think makes you guys so interesting is like for most hardcore bands that I listen to, I love seeing them live, and I could kind of care less to listen to their record, at home or while I'm on a run or something like that, just because it doesn't do the same thing for me.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's like a production thing or what, but your sound comes through so great on the record that I want to keep listening, not just at a live show, which I'm finally going to get to see you guys here, but also while I'm at home, while I'm in the car. I actually want to listen to it because it sounds good. It actually feels like there's solid production behind it. And I feel like the hardcore genre in general just doesn't put enough emphasis on that until maybe bands like Turnstile, for example, kind of started to do that themselves. But I mean, you guys sound so much more advanced than a band who's been around for just a couple years. And I know that you guys have had a lot of prior experience in other bands. Do you think that would you say that there's been a strong focus on not just making a good record, but also making a record that sounds good auditorily and like not just being like, good enough is good enough,
Definitely. And I'd probably take the least bit of like credit for that, coming from like I said, a hardcore background, I've been very much like, and like like I said, like I only own an iPhone. So everything I've recorded personally, especially for like they'll, when Squint demo songs out, our guitarists will write a full song on guitar, record it with GarageBand, get the bass out, record bass. They have, tones on their GarageBand set from like, them doing this in the past and stuff. And then they program drums to the song and everything like that. And then they send it to me and I record a voice memo of myself going over it, all their beautiful tones and production that they worked so hard for the demo to get. I'm like, if you want me to do a vocal demo, I will, but this is how it's going to sound. So that's very much my approach towards, and I used to almost take pride in that, being like, yeah, I don't need, I love the way the Raw Deal demo sounds or breakdown, like I would almost prefer something that came out, like I 16-year-old kids in New York City saving their allowance in 1987 to record, in some guy's basement on like trash cans. Like that's my ideal production. But for something like Squint, it doesn't, you don't necessarily want that. And as I've gotten older and I have started to open myself to like a lot more music that I would kind of close myself off to in the past, I've started to really kind of value production and stuff like that. But I still don't know a ton about it. But especially our bassist, actually, also, he's the same boat as me. When I was 14, actually, he was 15 and got me into hardcore. So we pretty much have had the same trajectory. So none of the production is his doing either, I should say. But our drummer and our two guitarists both really value production and take a lot of notice to it, And so when we're in the studio with whatever producer it is that we're with, they're the ones who are just kind of rattling off ideas, and rattling off certain things. And Ian's constantly like, all right, this part right here, this guitar tone, we want it to sound like So Much for the Afterglow by Everclear, or like, and, just little things like that where it's like, they know specifically what it is that they want. Yeah, I kind of feel like I rambled on it, but that's the general gist. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
It reminds me of like also not just the production, but the songwriting.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's speaking to that where it's like it clearly seems like, at least for some of the other band members, where like they kind of have a clear direction around like the songwriting of like they're gonna write like these parts, and then you're doing your vocals over it. One of the things that like when I try not to, I try my best, Brennen, not to like do the like this band sounds like this band kind of thing. Like I try not my try not to do my best, or try to do my best.
Can I guess though, Mason?
What do you think?
I bet you're gonna say Drug Church.
Oh, that's actually a really good guess. That's actually probably a better guess than what I was thinking. But
we get that a lot, but.
Do you really?
Yeah, that makes sense. Oh, actually, honestly, like a similar band though, like very much in the same vein though, Brennen, which is another band that Cullen loves. Just from the guitar songwriting standpoint, like not the production. I don't think of it as a production thing. Just from like how the guitars are played, it very similarly sounds like Military Gun. That to me. Too,
I get to see that.
Yeah, in that kind of vein.
Fuzz, a lot of like straightforward riffs that.
Just like the riffs feel very like Military Gun to me, and so, and again, like not like obviously you guys have your own like version of that,
totally different stuff.
But it's kind of the it's not like just chugga hardcore. Clearly,
no,
right? Like there's a sophistication to the guitar riffs that are being played that are clearly hardcore riffs. And that to me is what reminds me of like Military Gun, because it's like obviously Military Gun's like not just like doing chugga hardcore riffs. So that's like why I think of it in that way. But I'm curious, like for you as a vocalist, it's not like thinking of guitar riff writing, like but yeah, for you, like how are you maybe like trying to differentiate Squint from like maybe like every other hardcore band that's like doing this like thing that every other hardcore band's doing?
Yeah. Well, first off, I was going to say we do get like both those comparisons pretty often. And, we honestly, for a while, it was kind of like aggravating because we were like, and this is, I feel comfortable saying that we're not so much, and I don't mean this in a negative way, we're not so much friends with Drug Church. Like we've met those guys, we played with them. They're awesome, incredible band live. Military Gun, we're pretty good friends with a couple people in the band and stuff like that. But there was never any like
Mason,
intention going into it,
Sorry, Brennen, we lost you there. For
And
a
it's not
second.
that,
Can you
we
say that
actually were
again?
like, are we good?
Sorry, can you say that again?
Are we
Yeah,
good
sorry, you
now?
froze on us. Yeah, you're good now.
I think so.
Mine still says network is struggling, which isn't good, but okay, I think
I think we're back. I think we're kind of back to
the
normal,
little bar went
Okay.
away, so that's a good sign.
Okay.
But yeah, I was just saying we played with Drug Church before. They're an awesome band. We don't really know those guys. Military Gun, our buddies and stuff like that. And they're both incredible bands. We definitely didn't like at the beginning set out to. Honestly, we at the beginning didn't set out to sound like anything, not in like a pompous way at all, but just like Ian. I ran into Ian. It was like right after COVID lockdowns were kind of letting up. I ran into him at a farmer's market and he was like, I've got these riffs written, do you want me to send it to you? And he's always done more like kind of like emo adjacent, like kind of like promise ring type stuff, and like he's always been more in that kind of world of things. So I was like, well, I can't sing, but I'll do what I can over them, And so that's really how the Squint sound just kind of started, was Ian having these melodic songs and then me just yelling over them because what I do is my best attempt at singing. So, but over time, we've also started talking, like, once we kind of landed on, all right, so this is the sound that we came up with. How do we refine it? And what do we put into this? And what do we, And so, we try to, I think the main thing that we do to try and set ourselves apart, and this may sound kind of dumb or lame, but just is really not overthink it at all, just kind of, if everybody just puts their little bit of ingredients in, it'll always come out sounding like we do, and it's when we start to like overthink things that, it starts to kind of muddy things up. And that's even been like, we have a new record coming out here in a couple months, and we're definitely like pushing things in different directions, like even further than on Big Hand. And when we were writing these songs, a lot of it, I was nervous that we were going to lose our sound somewhat, And with the end product, it just kind of solidified to me that if I just do what it is that I do, and I have the faith in my bandmates that they're going to do what it is they do, it's, it's going to come out sounding like one of our songs. And, but as far as like Drug Church and Military Gun and all those bands go, I think we're all just pulling from the same tree as far as like, we're all like all people from a hardcore background, like Ian from Military Gun's been in like tons of bands growing up and stuff like that. He's like always been around, and like, Drug Church, as I'd like Pat was in End of a Year and all that kind of stuff. And so I think we're all like vocalists that come from a hardcore background and have that same kind of approach towards things. And so, we all really like, Minor Threat, and we also really like Archers of Loaf and Seaweed and bands like that, and so we try and just throw all that in the mix. And, I Killing Time is one of my favorite bands of all time, but I also love Third Eye Blind's self-titled record. And why can't you throw two together, and mix it all up? And
Exactly.
Yep, exactly. There is something we said about I mentioned like Turnstile and Knock Loose, and Cullen mentioned Drug Church, and there's Military Gun. Like all of these bands, right? Like they're all kind of coming from a little bit of a hardcore world, but like especially like Turnstile and Knock Loose. Like if you listen to like their most popular songs, like for Turnstile, right? Like it might be like Holiday, for example. Like that's a hardcore song. Like that's like it's not a pop punk song. It's not one of their like kind of shoegazy songs. It's like that's a hardcore song. Or if you listen to like Counting Worms, right? Like that is a Knocked Loose song, right? Like they're not like they're not trying to like appeal to the masses with a song like that, right? Like or even like if you want to go to like Drug Church, like Weed Pin is probably their most famous song, right? like that's still like a very hardcore song. Like they're not like that sounds like a Drug Church song, like through and through. Like what, regardless of like any album, like that's a Drug Church song. So it's just like one of those things where it's just like, you, like in that world, like as long as you just kind of stay true to who you are and you're just good songwriters, you're gonna find success. And
Yeah.
you, as long as you keep consistent to it. And all of those bands, like I think we can all attest to this, like whether it's Turnstile, Knocked Loose, Drug Church, even Military Gun, I obviously I know Military Gun's probably the newest of those bands, but like most of those bands, they've been at it for a long time. They've been working for it for a long time. And they just like, they keep working and they keep working and they keep working and they like find that kind of that little like breakthrough piece. And
Definitely.
and that happens.
And I feel like, especially in like a streaming, like, like modern time and stuff like that, you really don't have to, I mean, like we're kind of losing the whole concept of like sugarcoating things in order for them to go over well, because you don't need to anymore be like Linkin Park with the like one, like you got hard riffs on the record, but you got the one obvious radio hit with the chorus,
Right.
because you need to appeal to the kid in the, the 13-year-old me in the backseat. And you also need to appeal to, my mom who's driving the car so she doesn't change the station, but like nowadays when we have like streaming services and stuff like that I won't name any of because they're all evil, you know what I'm saying? But anyway, like they go, it's easier for kids to seek out what it is they actually want, And I think that's why you're seeing stuff like that is because, when people are going to the Knock Loose, page or whatever, they're not picking the sugar-coated single, maybe they're picking the single, but Knock Loose is smart enough to understand this is what our fans want. They don't want the sugar-coated chorus. They want hard because that's what we are, And it's like, it's no one's going to see a scary movie and walking out and being like, dude, that was not that scary. That was awesome. It's like, if you go to a scary movie, you want to get scared. And like, people know that now, if you want something hard like that, and if you want a Drug Church song, you go to the Drug Church page and you're going to, you know what I mean? So.
Yeah. I mean, I think about it like, I mean, Under Oath, like if you go back 20 years ago, Under Oath, they had a song literally almost won a Grammy for music video of the year. And that was Under Oath. And that song was like, you could argue is maybe one of their most hardcore songs that they've ever released with Writing on the Walls.
Yeah.
Like if you listen to Writing on the Walls, it's like, it's a heavy song and they almost won a Grammy for it.
Yeah.
It's wild. I didn't know that.
Yeah. They almost like they lost to probably one of the most viral music videos ever with OK Go. So it's like one of those things where it's like, as long as you just stay true to who you are, people are gonna care. And obviously, like you look back now and like like They're Only Chasing Safety has become clearly the most famous Under Oath thing, but like at the time, like that was a big thing. And I don't know, there's just something about like just staying true to who you are and just writing good music.
Definitely.
That will get you a long ways.
For sure. Yeah. And just like, especially just being true to like, the history of, not the history so much, but those who came before you and all that. And, like the genre itself and, don't sell out.
That's right. Yeah. Well, and I that's what I kind of like that you were talking about how you're kind of, I don't know if you want to call it the old soul, but you're the like old school hardcore guy. Like that's like your jam and the basis, right? The rest of the band has different influences, but they pull in your influences and you're learning from their influences. And then it all kind of turns into its own thing. And I love that you talked about how one of your guitarists has a pretty strong emo influence, because I can totally tell that. I mean, there's parts in there where I'm like, oh yeah, this feels like 90s Midwest emo at times, and I dig that. That's something that really appeals to me. And then you yourself, I don't know how where this maybe comes from, or maybe you do it intentionally or not, but you have incredible diction as a vocalist, which in the hardcore realm, that's not generally something that you see in my experience. Is that something that you intend to do? I mean, because I can make out every single word exactly what you're saying.
It definitely, it's not intended, but I'm very lucky that I have a voice that, that I can do that with. Like in general, my whole like vocal approach, as I've gotten older, I've started doing things like warming up, but generally there was no approach at all. I learned to do, not even learned to do, but learned that I could do vocals just from, being handed the mic at shows growing up, and I would hear myself on the PA and be like, oh, that wasn't too bad, or anything like that. And I've always, taken a lot of pride in my own lyrics, but also just a lot of like, I find a lot of importance in the concept of lyrics themselves, and I feel like that can get lost in hardcore just because it is such a, so many voices are so distorted and muffled and all that, or it is recorded in, a kitchen
Inside
in
a
the
trash
Lower
can.
East Side, but like, I mean, it arguably like, not to toot my own horn in any way, but like lyrics are like one of the most important parts of hardcore, if they might even be more
100%.
important than the delivery, like it's, like you can hear Youth of Today, but until you're sitting there and reading the lyric book and understanding what they're talking about, that's when you'll really understand and you really hear Youth of Today. You know what I mean? And especially in, like I said, a day and age when everything is streamed, I feel really lucky that I do have a voice that's like as crisp as it is, and like that you can make out my lyrics without having to pull out the lyric sheet from the record or Google it or whatever it is that you're doing, and just things like, alliteration and just rhyme schemes and stuff like that have always been very important to me, even just like subconsciously. I've always, alongside hardcore and stuff like that, I've always had a very soft spot for hip hop growing up. It's funny. Like when I was a lot younger, I kind of like listened to hip hop in secret because I was so, like adamant about being like the hardcore metal kind of guy that I didn't want people to know that I was listening to, Biggie and stuff like that in my room. But as I've gotten older, I start to like really see how much, stuff like Wu-Tang or Nas or any of that kind of stuff has like imprinted itself in my head as far as like my flow and cadence and all that, and just, my lyrical approach and my, alliteration and diction and use of like certain words. I don't know, but it's
Dude, you also have like an insane on just basically a record and a half, 2 records here. You have countless one-liners, like philosophical one-liners that I literally have to like pause and like think about for a moment. I'm like, damn,
thank you.
that's a moment where I need to digest this for a second.
That's, something I definitely strive for. And it's hard because it's not something you can set out and just do, you can't sit down and go, I'm going to write something really profound,
Profound.
But
yeah. Cause if you do, you sound like a total douchebag.
no. And
Usually.
it's one of those things too, where I try to like all my best songs and all my favorite one lines and stuff like that. Like you said, I'm very much about like delivering things in a very like, using simple words and stuff like that, but with complex ideas, because I want the lyrics to be for everybody. I don't want you to have to Google a word and not know what that means, and have to decipher what I'm saying to decipher what I'm saying, I just
Right.
want you to just be like you said, that means a lot, because that's the exact impact I want, is to just have someone be like, hear that, are you the fooling or fooled? And be like, whoa, hold up,
Yeah.
sing along to
Let
it
me
a
get my
couple times
let me get my
before you
tinfoil hat
really,
for a second.
yeah. It's almost like seeps into your brain before you even process what it is that I'm saying. And,
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if you're a William Blake fan, Sir William Blake, the poet, engraver, all that stuff.
Not familiar,
But his poetry has a very similar style to me. When I read it, I very simplistic word. Like there's nothing that's like out of the ordinary, extremely difficult. It's written in the 1800s. It should be difficult because that's like a different language style.
Yeah.
And I read it and I understand everything, but I don't understand a single thing. And then I read again and it's like it washes over you. And the third time, now you're like, oh, I get all of this.
Yeah.
And it really like has that impact that just smacks you. And you're like, okay, I just need to sit with art for a while to understand it and to feel these things as intended.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. I need to check out his stuff because that sounds awesome.
I think you nail it. Like I get similar vibes from your songwriting style.
No, I definitely, you know, I feel like there's a lot of people out there that have like a kind of like a kindred spirit, so to say, as far as like the writing style that I have. And when I encounter it, I'm always kind of like respect, you know, like, or, you know, I'll even just like in pop songs randomly and stuff like that, or I'll find where I took things from. Like I'm going back and listening to all these records that, you know, I heard when I was younger that maybe I didn't even realize I was absorbing, you know, but it's like listening to like Stone Temple Pilots again. And then I hear this one cadence and I'm like, oh, I stole that. Like 11-year-old me heard that and was just like, here it goes right in the back of the brain, you know? So it's interesting. Yeah. Seeing like the different kind of styles of writing and stuff like that, how people can, you know, kind of naturally come to them on their own, you know, like me and this guy from the 1800s who I've never heard of and has clearly never heard of me, or, you know, it can seep into itself like organically, like the Stone Temple Pilots example, you know?
Totally.
Well, I think that's like the cool thing about art is, yeah, whether it's like Stone Temple Pilots, Squint, or William Blake, doesn't matter. Like there are human experiences that we all experience and we can all relate to, regardless of culture and regardless of time. And whenever that happens, like there's going to be artists that are like, hey, like that's the thing that I'm experiencing, and we're going to talk about that. So whether that's Squint, whether that's Stone Temple Pilots, or whether that's William Blake from the 1800s, like you're going to just talk about that. And that's like a cool thing about human experience is you talk about the things that you experience.
Definitely.
And, you know, a lot of times that's love or that's heartbreak or whatever it is that we experience just collectively as humans. Like that's just a cool thing about being human.
Yeah. That we're all essentially going through the same thing, you know?
Yeah. The same with different eyes, different perspectives. There is one other thing I wanted to ask in relation to that to an extent. Is there an artist out there or a songwriter in particular, a lyricist in particular, that when you hear their lyrics, you're like, how the fuck do you come up with that?
There's a lot of like, I guess a good example would be Wes Eisel. I've always really loved everything he's written, and I'm on it, admittedly not even that huge of like an American Nightmare fan, but lyrically, like that band is, you know, I would, you know, like print out background music and just have it as like like a coffee book table, probably before I put that record on, you know. I love Cold Cave a lot, but his writing in general, some of the stuff and like some of the just the like you said, like the one-liners and stuff like that he has in Cold Cave, I'm just like chills run over your body, just kind of like, God, that is so good. And how did he do that, you know?
Yeah.
There's also certain lyrics that like there's this one Nas lyric that the other day we were listening to Illmatic at work. I manage a kitchen, and we were listening to Illmatic, and I had paused it right after this one lyric, and I was like, I could probably write a college thesis off of that right there, just that one bar and how incredible it is. And like, so yeah, I mean, like lyrically, yeah, I love West Eisel, Nas. I've always been like, when I was a lot younger, probably 14, I got into Bright Eyes and a lot of the writing that Connor Oberst, like I've kind of grown out of listening to them, you know, like their most recent records I haven't really delved into, or what I have heard, I didn't really grab me. But just where I was at that age, like his writing really made a deeper impact on me than I think I realized at the time. just
Hell yeah.
the way he approaches choruses and like relates things back to each other. I do a thing a lot where, it's, there's probably a term for it, but like if a chorus has like 4 bars, maybe the 3rd bar is different on my second refrain. It's something else that it kind of changes the concept of the chorus. I take a lot of that from him, and he was also one of the first lyricists I remember hearing as a kid and really being like, I had a paper route whenever I first, like I said, I was 13 or 14 when I had this record. And I remember every morning just the sun coming up and I would listen to that same record pretty much and just be like breaking apart the lyrics in my puny little brain, just like mind blown. So those are probably like my 3 lyricists that really just like continue to like, impress me.
That's cool.
Isn't it funny like how music just like brings us back to like those visceral memories? Like you were talking about like with that album, like you being probably on a little pedal bike, just like, throwing newspapers or whatever it was that you're throwing. And like I remember, I don't know why, but like for whatever reason, this album's coming to mind. But I'm a huge Appleseed Cast. I don't know if if you know the Appleseed Cast. The Appleseed Cast is one of my favorite bands, but they have an album called The Illumination Ritual that came out, I think 2013. And a few years later, I like went through like kind of one of my first like major breakups. And I just like, I have this visceral memory of listening to that album as I'm like backing out of a driveway. And like every time I listen to that album, I just like feel myself like in my like 1998 Monte Carlo, just like backing out of a driveway.
Definitely.
And it's just like funny how like music like brings us to that. Like in the same way, like, if you smell like somebody and you're like, oh my God, that like smells like my grandma, or like smells like my old girlfriend or whatever it is. Like you're just like, oh my God, like you just like smell or like music or whatever, like any sort of sense like can just like bring you back to something. And so it's just always fun when like music just like brings you back to something like that.
Yeah, no, definitely that like, that feeling's crazy, when you're just like, cause it's not necessarily even something that you want to feel sometimes, or it's, not even necessarily something that you understand, like I'll hear like a Kenny Chesney song that my dad listened to when I was like 8 years old. And I'll be like, or, oh, here's a good example. The other day, recently, I've been like, I'm going to check out Moby, like.
I just did that last week. That's so weird.
Yeah. Well, I was just like, this guy's like a hardcore guy. I know he played in like Flipper and stuff like that. Yeah. And he seems like a solid enough person. And I like all the stuff that I've heard so far. So I'm going to check out. And so I was going through that. I think it's called Play, the record where he's like jumping in the air. And when that song Southside came on, that song that's like, I can't even remember how it goes now, but it's just one of those like, the second I heard the chorus, I was like, oh my God, like this was so deeply holed in the back of my brain from when I was like 7 years old. And like, I loved this melody as a kid, but I just forgot all about this song, And yeah, so I had that moment with Moby there,
It's fun when that stuff kind of kicks back up. A similar story to that, almost kind of the same vein of music as well. Fatboy Slim's song,
right?
The one with Christopher Walken and
the Funk Soul Brother. Is that one?
You can go with this. Yeah, I can't rember exactly.
Oh, okay, I know what you're saying.
Goes, but it's got Christopher Walken in the music video, and he's like floating around in like this room. I heard it on commercial or something recently, and I probably haven't listened to it in 20 years.
It's like an acid flashback, You're just like,
yeah. I mean, I was like.
Yeah, it hits you out of nowhere.
It's like you're waking up from a
remember
coma.
Nam all of a sudden.
Yeah. It's also funny going back and listening to stuff that you heard when you were a kid now, with the context of everything you have. And like,
yeah,
like there is a band, Death Wish band from the late aughts, early 2010s called Shipwreck AD. They were from Boston. And I remember just as a kid being like, nothing sounds like this. How do you even write music like this? And just, not having any concept of it. And just the other day at the gym, I went to go check it out, expecting to have like the same, it's really good, but I was just like, oh, this just sounds like Trial, like with like this sounds like Strife with a bunch of Trial thrown in or something, And it almost was like kind of like took all the magic out of it, now that I understand how they got there. And now that I'm just like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, yeah, took all
For
the,
Mason and I, that band was Skillet.
yeah. I'm not,
But it probably
super-
makes you appreciate like the bands that like are like still standing out, especially at that time frame. Like the bands that still stand out. It's like,
Yeah.
oh wait, like
The ones
wow,
that are
they were
still
doing
good.
something. They were doing something different. Like they were doing something unique. They were
Yeah.
doing something that was like
no, they're
completely out of the ordinary.
And I it's almost like I have a new respect for Shipwreck because I understand like, oh, I too love Integrity and I love Trial, and I would never think to put those two things together. So like this is
Right.
even though young me was just like, what is this? This is crazy, It's like, I can't imagine what like Knocked Loose sounds crazy to me as an adult, but I can hear it and go, okay, like there's some Entombed, there's, some of this in there,
Yeah.
indecision vocal kind of stuff. But if I was 12 and I heard that, I would just be like, what, dude,
What? Yeah. Yeah. Nothing's new under the sun, but it doesn't need to be.
No, as long as it's new to you. Yeah.
Everything's also borrowed under the sun. So
Truly, especially in hardcore, some of the best stuff that's just, it's like tattooing, it's like some of the best stuff is just preserving the legacy and the culture and the history and just being like, when someone's like, your band sounds exactly like SSD, just being like, yeah,
because it fucking rips.
yeah,
bro.
dude, you get it, so that should be the approach we start taking when anybody says we sound like, Drug Church or Military Gun or any of those other bands that I said,
Like, fuck yeah, we do.
yeah. Because those bands are awesome,
Yeah. Sweet. Well, are you excited for Furnace Fest?
Yeah, can't wait. We'll be touring out there with our friends Spaced, who are playing on Sunday. And originally we were supposed to have a show on Friday with them. And we were so bummed because we were going to miss Texas Is the Reason and Jimmy Eat World and Hot Water Music. But things got moved around. So now our off day that was Thursday is now Friday. We're going to make it in time to see everybody. So can't wait for that. And then Saturday is going to be awesome too.
You hanging out on Saturday?
That's what we're playing Saturday.
Or sorry, you're hanging out on Friday and you're gonna play Saturday.
You got it. Yeah. Sunday is still up in the air. I think we want to stick around, but it's going to be hard because most of the bands we want to see are later in the day. Aside from Space, check out Spaced at 2 p.m. I believe, 1 p.m. something like that. But we got to get a leg up on the drive too. So we'll play it by ear and see what happens. They don't let me drive the van, so it's not my call.
Which stage are you on again? Do you remember? So there's the pond stage, there's the shed, and then there's main stage.
Pond, that's where we are. Yeah.
Pond. Good,
Yep.
Good. That'll be fun.
Be fun.
Yeah.
That one
All right.
always has the best sound.
Cullen will, if you stage dive, Cullen will literally pick you up and then take you to the pond and throw you into the water of the pond.
Yep. There's
Perfect.
a boat in there that's sunk, and we'll
So if
try
you
to-
want to, if you want a viral moment, just jump up, find Cullen, jump into his arms, and then Cullen will literally physically carry you because Cullen's big enough for this.
It's
He'll
true.
physically carry you over to the pond and throw you into the pond.
Lovely. All right. Cool. Yeah. No, it's gonna be, especially if it's, I don't know if it's gonna be a hot day or not, but that might be a nice, refreshing little mid-set,
Oh yeah.
dip. But
Just make sure you're not. I don't really know the battery power of a microphone, but like maybe just make sure you're not like holding a microphone when you do that.
I don't think it's gonna be wireless. I'm pretty sure they're all wired.
Okay, well make sure that
Like a
you
true
let go of that
hardcore
wire.
show should be.
Make sure you let go of that wired microphone and then let Cullen just throw you in the pond.
it won't be my first electrocution, it won't be the last, but
See, there you go.
As
But
long
it's
as
hardcore,
not,
baby.
As long as it's not your last, for real. So
yeah, you'll catch me in the 10-yard fight pit on Sunday or Saturday for
hell
sure.
yeah.
And then, we're just gonna be hanging out Saturday. Really excited for all of it. Our buddies in Secret World are playing on Friday. So anybody who's going
Nice.
that day, check them out. They're coming all the way from Australia. So show them some love.
They deserve some American love, is what you're saying.
Yeah, which I mean, they're getting it. They just announced they're doing a full
They don't
US.
bring an inland taipan, I'm gonna like freak out. Like if I don't feel like I'm about to die from a venomous bite, I don't really care.
I think they keep a snake in one of their guitar heads. So
I just want a didgeridoo breakdown. That's all I want.
yeah, they're an awesome band, and they're about to be taking over the world. So get in on it while you can. They're doing a full US with high vis right now, and yeah,
dude, it's gonna rip. It's gonna rip. It's a fun time. You haven't ever been, have you?
No.
Okay. Not as a fan or anything either.
No, the lineup's always been awesome, but especially as I've gotten older and, being in bands as an adult and stuff like that, it feels like all my free time kind of goes towards my own band as opposed to when I was younger and I would, pack the car with my friends and drive to Philadelphia for This Is Hardcore or something. So
sure. Well, and there's bills to pay and all that stuff as well. So
exactly, yeah. But
I understand how it goes.
But for that reason, it's always so awesome when we get to do stuff like this. So big shout out to Furnace Fest for having us and making it, possible for me to go. So.
Oh yeah, those guys got great ears for killer artists, especially artists that aren't getting the attention yet that they deserve. And you guys are such a band. But let's get into your top 5 most influential albums. Are you ready?
Yeah, I got them written down. So
killer! Wow, he's ready to go, prepared.
Well,
it's a list.
It's
a
good
whole list. Oh my goodness!
Because when I was making the list, I was like, do I do my top 5 favorite of all time or my most influential for Squint? And I did the latter. So I was happy to hear at the beginning that's kind of what you wanted. So
good.
For number 5, I have Blacklisted, Heavier Than Heaven, Lonelier Than God. Yeah, it's incredibly epic record name. I saw them when I was very young. Actually, the song Magic on Big Hand is about the first time I went to a, real larger hardcore show and was just kind of like dumbfounded by everything happening around me. And that was a Blacklisted concert. So Blacklisted always have a extremely important place in my heart. And they are a band that's evolved a lot over time, and every record they have, I love. So it's hard to kind of narrow it down. But because of basically me finding this record right after seeing them at that show, just the time in my life when I found it, it has a certain speed and urgency to it. That's just kind of it's so start and stop and breaknecky that it just truly it meshes with the lyrics so well. Their singer, who is another huge, maybe not so much a lyrical influence on me, but vocally, his delivery is a huge influence on the way I do things with Squint. He has very self-loathing lyrics and very kind of chaotic and coupled with the music, the vulnerable lyrics and all that just make it seem like you're inside of this person's mind that's just losing it, And then, like I said, it's just absolute chaos, and then they'll just snap it back into this hard mosh part, and it's just it feels like mental health sometimes, It's things can be such a jumble and such everything, and then one thing comes through and just brings everything back into focus for you, and that's how this record can feel for me. So,
love that description.
Thank you. Yeah, I love this record a lot. Even if you Google just the album, look at the album art, it's just some of the most powerful art I've ever, I love this record.
Yeah.
But the number 4, I've got The Earth Is Flat by Supertouch. Supertouch is kind of a band that gets kind of slipped through the cracks.
Yeah.
I feel like they're a New York hardcore band that a lot of people don't talk about as much as maybe Gorilla Biscuits or Youth of Today. They shared members with all those bands. And Supertouch is they were very just kind of pushing the envelope for the time. They were very melody driven. A lot of people, if you listen to the record, look it up, you'll be like, this isn't even a hardcore band. What are you talking about? That's clean singing, it's it almost sounds like Rush and stuff like that at times, but it's it's just, people similar to, it's this record came out, I think the year I was born, but it's so cool that there was people back then who have this similar approach to hardcore that I have now, where they're not afraid to push push the envelope, pull in other influences, have acoustic guitars on the record. This was a big record for me that, like I said, when my bandmates were like, we're going to do some acoustic guitar stuff, I was like, what? And Ian was like, you love stuff with acoustic guitars. And listening back to this record, there's acoustics all over it. And it's incredible lyrics, like extremely introspective stuff for the time, especially like in the scene. It was like, there's one of the first songs, like one of the first lyrics Mark Ryan says, is basically saying he's been staying up all night drinking and thinking about how things are wrong. And this is like in a scene that was predominantly straight edge at the time, and like, it's just cool that like he was, just doing things vulnerable and honestly, and that's what I take a lot mostly from this record. And again, incredible album art on this one too.
Hell yeah.
Number 3, I have Illmatic by Nas for reasons I said earlier. Just like the rhyme scheme, the flow, the visualization of everything that he does. It's just like you can close your eyes and you can picture being in, like middle of July, 1995, New York, like you can fry an egg on the sidewalk, like do the right thing kind of vibes. And just like lyrically, there's so much, like I said, so much alliteration and stuff like that I've taken from Nas, and so much of just like the way that I flow over music and the way that my cadence is, I can credit a lot to him, and go back to that.
Would you almost say like his flow almost has like a rocking motion to it? Is that like a fair statement, or am I crazy?
No, I could see that. It's certainly not like an urgent kind of, it's not.
Yeah, no,
it's like the farthest.
Nice and easy.
I guess it's not the farthest thing from something like Busta Rhymes or something, but it's like, it's very like nonchalant, but also, like it's almost like there's multiple times where it feels like he's letting the beat go and then he just comes back in on it. And I feel like I take that a lot to where, and also just even when I'm writing lyrics, I don't approach them the same way a lot of other people do. Not in like a, like toot my own horn kind of way, but just, if anything, more of like in like a ignorant way, like I was never formally taught how to write songs. So like Will, our drummer, will always be like, well, we got the song map over there and that's the verse, but you made it a chorus. And I'd be like, oh yeah. Well, is that cool? And he'd be like, yeah, it's cool, but it's just like that. The next part is the chorus, and you keep refraining on the verse and you keep changing, but yeah, whatever, And so, I mean, and a lot of that, like I won't understand where I'll be like, oh man, that is weird. And then maybe I'll hear a Nas song, later on or something like that, where they do that. And I go, oh man, that's where, or, like a Dinosaur Jr. song or something like that, where, I'm like, this is where like, I don't even know what a pre-chorus is, but I apparently wrote one because this Jay Mascis part slipped into my brain,
I almost think that more artists in the scene need to have, an all bars song. You know how like the greatest hip hop artists, they always have an all bars song?
What,
There's
like
no chorus.
Yeah.
It's just straight bars all the way through.
That's
so like
there's
no pre-chorus, there's no bridge, there's no nothing else. It's just boom.
That's how most
all the way through
my bands were kind of growing up, like Squint's really the first band that I've had that has had like kind of like pop song structure and like, that idea of verse, chorus, verse kind of thing. When I was younger, it was very much like, I don't know, maybe we did have songs that were like that, but it's if we did, it was only because Breakdown had songs like that, or like,
sure,
we were just going off of that template, But yeah, number 2, then I got I'm Wide Awake It's Morning by Bright Eyes. Like I said, I feel like talked about this one quite a bit, but like I said, just the age of finding this when I did, and like the impact that the songs had on me lyrically. It was one of the first records that I can really remembering, like sitting with the lyrics and really being like replaying a song because of the lyrics, Oh dang, we lose them. But yeah, it's like one of the first records I can really remember just kind of like sitting with the lyrics and just like really feeling the depth of them, and as I said too, it's just like the lasting effect of that record on me. It's something that when I was in my mid-teens, I probably would have never even admitted to liking at any point. But now that I'm older, I can like reflect on it and just see how much of an impact it had on me. And then number one, I got to go with Bright Side by Killing Time. It's just the absolute full package as far as like a record. Like it kind of, honestly, as funny as it is to say, with like stuff like Bright Eyes on the list, it kind of combines everything that is on this list into one album for me. It's like lyrically incredible. It's hard. It's catchy somehow still. Like it's got melodies and like hard lyrics that will somehow like creep into your brain and you'll be humming them later and stuff like that. And just the melody of the record, like it's such a hard record, but there's so much. Another band I considered listing that have similar tendencies is a band like Crown of Thorns, but a couple bands, I mentioned them just because they both do the kind of thing where it's just like extremely melodic and pretty riffs, but it's somehow still just so crushing and hard, and extremely vulnerable lyrics, about like heartbreak and things that, ostensibly like a large tattooed construction worker in 1989 wouldn't be opening up about. But, like when, I don't know, there's just something so cool about, like the hardness and the softness to it, and, luckily we, it's pretty cool. We're actually playing with Killing Time next weekend before on tour on our way to Furnace Fest. We'll be playing with them in Little Rock. So I'm super excited about that.
Yeah, what an honor. What I love about your list is, whether it's like Killing Time or some of the couple of the other hardcore bands you mentioned, and then like obviously you have like Nas, you have Bright Eyes in there. It's like it's such a weirdly enough, like with Squint, like you kind of hear all of those influences. Like if you're paying attention closely, I think you hear all of that. Like you mentioned before, like obviously Squint's a hardcore band, right? Like so you hear the hardcore elements, but then you also hear like some of these different hardcore bands that you mentioned, like kind of have these like really interesting dynamic influences where they're playing their guitar writing is a little different than maybe just like a straight up like hardcore band. And so you hear a little bit of that. And then obviously you talk a little bit like vocally, like there's kind of the way you cadence maybe some of your lyrics at times is similar to Nas, or like the way that you like go back on some of your choruses with Bright Eyes. Like there's just like there's some of these influences where I'm like, as you mentioned some of them, I'm like, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense. Like totally, I can hear that. Like it actually makes sense. So as much as like so many of the like whether it's Nas or Bright Eyes or even some of the hardcore bands, like as much as they're all different from each other, like I'm like, oh, I can kind of hear a little bit of that all in Squint, which is really cool. Like I love the fact that like you have this like diverse influential list, and you can hear to some degree, if you're paying attention closely, you can hear all of that in Squint.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, I feel like art in general, like I said a little bit earlier, I kind of closed myself off to so much stuff when I was younger that I, was drawn to, but I didn't want to admit to myself that I was. That, now in hindsight, I'm starting to understand just how culminative, every influence is in general. And, like, I mean, it doesn't just stop with even music, like you can pull all kinds of stuff into, like some of the best aspects of hardcore, especially when I look back in hindsight, are when bands pull from, other aspects of other genres and stuff like that. And, like when Gorilla Biscuits had trumpets on their record, I bet they got, and a harmonica, I bet they got made fun of, but they were trying new things and they were doing things differently and they were wearing their hearts on their sleeves. And so, I wouldn't even say I try to do that with Squint, if I try to do anything with it, it's just go into it with an empty mind, and just what comes out is what comes out.
Yeah.
you know.
So that's what a true artist does in my mind. So, and obviously I've never made music, but that's how I would imagine like a really good artist conceives of their music for sure. So I get that. So, Brennen, what do you want to plug? Obviously, it sounds like new Squint music will be coming out soon. Obviously, there's plenty of shows coming out, but yeah, what do you all want to plug?
I guess our bassist has like a new movie coming out soon. He's like an actor guy. Yeah, it's with what's that dude's name? Bryan Cranston.
The Breaking Bad guy?
Yeah. My bad. I had to look at my list real quick to see what the guy's name was. But yeah, Jake's playing opposite him, so you should check that out.
What? Like what kind of like movie or show is this that he would be playing with Bryan Cranston? Like, because like Bryan Cranston, like it's not like he's no slouch. Like clearly he knows what he's doing.
You know the guy? Like you're familiar with him?
I mean, I'm familiar with his work. I've never met him. Well, actually, I did take a little selfie with him at one point, but I've never met him other than like, I keep saying I've never met him. It's not like I'm like hanging out with the guy.
It has something to do with like a pool shark or something like that, who he like gets in bad with the mob, and he has to start flipping Pokemon cards to make his money. It's I don't know. Jake explained it to me, but I don't know.
I hope Jake has the right Pokemon cards. I'm just saying, like, you know, for Jake's sake, I just hope that he's got the right Charizard.
I don't know. But yeah, no, check out Jake's movie. I don't even know if it has a title yet, but just Google Jake Lindsay, Bryan Cranston, and it should come right up.
Well,
in addition to that, I mean,
no,
we're going on tour, you know, so check us out. If you're out east, we're playing around with our friends in Space, playing with our friends in Prim, be in New York City for the Sunday Drive Showcase. Just
love it.
That and Jake's movie is all I can really think of.
Great. Wonderful. Well, we're super stoked to not only see this movie. I mean, I'm a huge Bryan Cranston fan. So like the fact I didn't even know that he was in this new movie. So this is incredible. So I'm excited for that. And also, obviously, Cullen and I are going to see you literally in a week and a half. Actually, yeah, like just basically a week and a half. We're going to see you guys play. And I cannot wait. We're going to freak out. It's going to be so much fun. And you never know, like Cullen literally might just like carry you over to a pond and dump you in a pond. And you're going to have to deal with that.
Damn. Well, all right.
So that's what we're looking forward to. So thank you so much, Brennen, for chatting a little bit more about Squint. And yeah, we're just super excited to see you guys.
Of course, y'all. Thanks for having me.